I heard the whimpering before I understood it was coming from me. The sound barely made it past my throat, just this pathetic, strangled noise that died in the thick air between the trees. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness ahead, but the light felt wrong, like it was stopping too soon. Absorbed by something I couldn't see, I kept walking anyway, because turning back meant admitting I was lost, and I wasn't ready for that yet. The hiking trail had disappeared 20 minutes ago, maybe longer. Time felt slippery out here, elastic in ways that made my stomach turn. I'd been following what I thought were marker blazes on the trees, those little painted rectangles that guide you through state forests. But they'd gotten farther apart, then stopped entirely. Now I was pushing through underbrush that scratched at my jeans and caught on my jacket, moving deeper into woods that felt less like a forest and more like a throat. My phone had died an hour back, not the battery, the whole device. It had gotten hot in my pocket, so hot I'd pulled it out and watched the screen go black, the metal casing warm against my palm like something living. I'd tried to restart it 3 times before giving up and stuffing it back in my jacket. The external battery pack I'd brought was fully charged that morning, but when I connected it, nothing happened. The little LED lights that usually blinked during charging stayed dark, so I had the flashlight. That was it, a cheap LED thing I'd grabbed from a gas station on the drive up, still in its plastic packaging when I'd shoved it in my backpack. I'd only bought it because the guy behind the counter had given me this look when I mentioned I was hiking Pinewood Ridge alone. This expression that said he thought I was an idiot but was too polite to say it out loud. I should have listened to that look. The temperature had dropped fast after sunset. I could see my breath now. These little clouds that hung in the beam of my flashlight before dissolving into the dark. My fingers were getting numb despite my gloves. I kept switching the flashlight from hand to hand, shoving the free one into my pocket to warm up, but it wasn't helping much. The cold was the kind that worked its way in deep, settling into your bones and making everything feel brittle. Something cracked in the woods to my left, another branch breaking, something wet and organic that made my skin prickle. I swung the flashlight toward the sound, but saw nothing except trees and shadows and the white gleam of eyes that vanished the second my light hit them. Probably a deer, maybe a raccoon. That's what I told myself as I kept walking, moving faster now, my breath coming harder. The forest had gone quiet. That's what I noticed next. No birds, no insects, none of the small rustling sounds that usually fill woods after dark. Just my footsteps crunching through dead leaves and my breathing, too loud in my own ears. The silence pressed down like a physical weight, and I found myself walking on my toes, trying to move quieter, trying not to disturb whatever was listening, because something was listening. I could feel it, that primitive part of your brain that evolved to sense predators, that ancient warning system that keeps prey animals alive. It was screaming at me now. Every hair on my body stood up. My heart hammered against my ribs hard enough to hurt. I wanted to run, but I didn't know which direction to go. And running blindly through dark woods seemed like a good way to break my ankle or impale myself on a branch. So I kept walking, one foot in front of the other. Eyes forward, flashlight beam sweeping side to side, trying to convince myself this was fine. This was normal. I'd find my way back to the trail soon, and I'd be laughing about this over breakfast tomorrow, telling the story to the waitress at the diner I'd passed on the way here. That's when my flashlight started to dim, not flicker, not the usual warning before batteries die. It just got darker, like someone was slowly turning down a dimmer switch. The beam shrank from 15 feet to 10 to 5, the edges getting softer, the light itself turning yellow and sick. I smacked the flashlight against my palm, twisted the battery compartment to make sure the connection was good, but nothing changed. The darkness crept closer with every second. I stopped walking. My legs wouldn't move anymore, locked in place by something more powerful than conscious thought. The flashlight continued to fade, and in the shrinking circle of light I could see my hand shaking, the tremor so violent it made the beam dance across the trees. That's when the smell hit. Copper and rot, fresh blood and old death mixed together into something so thick I could taste it, coating the back of my throat. It came in a wave, rolling over me from behind, and my stomach heaved. I bent forward, gagging, trying not to vomit, one hand pressed against a tree trunk to keep myself upright. The bark was wet under my palm, slick with something that definitely wasn't sap. I pulled my hand back and saw it was dark with what could have been mud, but smelled like meat gone bad in summer heat. My flashlight beam, now barely stronger than a birthday candle, showed streaks of the same dark substance running down the tree trunk, pooling in the grooves of the bark. I took a step back and my boots squelched in something soft. Don't look down. That's what every instinct screamed. Don't look down, don't turn around, don't acknowledge what you already know is there. But I looked anyway because humans are stupid and curious, and because some part of me needed to see, needed to confirm what my hindbrain was already gibbering about. The ground around me glistened. Dark patches spread between the trees, reflecting what little light remained. Not water, too thick. It moved wrong, had the wrong consistency, the wrong texture. In the dim light of my flashlight, I saw shapes half buried in the leaves. Things that might have been branches or roots, but were too pale, too jointed, bent at angles that trees don't grow. Something breathed behind me. Not the wind, not an animal panting. This was slow and deliberate, air being drawn in and pushed out with mechanical precision, like lungs that had forgotten how to work properly and were learning again from memory. The sound was enormous, filling the entire forest, vibrating in my chest cavity until I felt like my ribs might crack from the resonance. I couldn't turn around. My body had made that decision without consulting me. Every muscle locked rigid, my spine frozen in place. My hands gripped the flashlight so hard my knuckles popped. The last light flickered, failed, came back as barely a glow. In that dying illumination, I saw my shadow stretching out in front of me, long and distorted, and behind it another shadow, something huge and wrong-shaped, with too many limbs and a head that wasn't quite a head. The smell got worse, overwhelming now, so thick it felt solid, like I was breathing in chunks of decay. My eyes watered, my throat constricted. I tried to take a breath and couldn't. Tried again and managed a thin wheeze that scraped down my windpipe like broken glass. Then the knowledge came. Not thoughts, not words. Pure information downloaded directly into my brain, too fast to process consciously but understood on some level deeper than language. I knew what stood behind me. I knew what it did. I knew what was about to happen, and that knowledge was worse than any physical pain, worse than dying, because it made me aware of every second that was coming, every moment of what remained. This thing didn't kill, it unmade. It took the basic architecture of life, the biological machinery that keeps a body functioning, and it ran everything in reverse. Cells uncoupling, tissues separating, the careful organization of muscles and nerves and organs coming apart, like a building being deconstructed brick by brick, except he stayed conscious through all of it, feeling each connection sever, each system fail. My legs started shaking, thought trembling, convulsing, my knees knocking together so hard I heard something crack. My boots scraped furrows in the dirt, but I wasn't moving forward anymore, wasn't moving anywhere. The shaking spread upward into my hips, my spine, my shoulders. My teeth chattered so violently I felt one of my molars split, the sharp edges cutting into my tongue. Blood filled my mouth, hot and copper tasting, exactly like the smell that surrounded me. The thing moved closer. I felt it without seeing it, felt the air pressure change, felt the displacement of space as something vast and impossible navigated through the gaps between trees. It didn't touch me. That would have been a mercy. Instead, it moved through me, occupying the same physical location, and my body reacted like every cell was being torn open simultaneously. Pain isn't the right word. Pain is something you feel. This was something deeper, more fundamental. This was my nervous system screaming in a language that predated consciousness, every neuron firing at maximum capacity, trying to process sensory information that human biology was never designed to interpret. My vision went white, then black, and showed me things that couldn't exist. Images that didn't follow the normal rules of perspective or dimension. I tried to scream, but my throat locked, muscles seizing hard enough that I felt the cartilage in my larynx compress. No sound came out. My lungs burned, desperate for air, but I couldn't draw breath, couldn't expand my chest. I stood there suffocating while perfectly capable of breathing, dying of asphyxiation with functioning lungs. Then the memory started, not mine, someone else's. A woman, middle-aged, hiking these same woods 3 months ago. I experienced her final minutes in perfect detail, felt what she felt as this thing found her. Her ankle twisting as she ran, bones splintering through skin. Her fall, face first into a rotting log, nose breaking, teeth shattering. The crawling that came after her, fingernails tearing off against rocks and roots as she tried to drag herself away. The realization that her spine had been damaged in the fall, that her legs weren't responding anymore, that she was trapped. Then the unmaking, ribs folding inward like wet paper, not breaking but compressing, collapsing in on themselves until her chest was concave, lungs trying to inflate in the space that no longer existed, making these pathetic whistling sounds with each attempted breath. Heart still beating, valves still pumping, but the geometry was all wrong now. Chambers overlapping, blood flowing in directions it was never meant to go. She'd stayed conscious through all of it. I felt her awareness, her mind screaming inside a body that had become a prison of collapsing meat. The thing had taken its time with her, learning, practicing, perfecting this sequence. By the time her brain finally shut down from oxygen deprivation, she'd done something that looked more like modern art than a human being. The memory faded and I was back in my own body, my own nightmare, and I understood with horrible clarity that what I just experienced wasn't a vision. It was a blueprint. Instructions. This thing was showing me what came next. My spine arched, not voluntarily. My back bent backward at an angle that sent white fire shooting down every nerve. I heard something pop deep in my lower back, felt the vertebrae separate, felt the pressure on my spinal cord. My legs disappeared, not gone, still there, still attached, but the connection was severed. The signals no longer traveling from brain to limb. I fell forward, my face hitting the dirt, and I couldn't even get my hands up to break the fall because those signals weren't getting through either. I lay there, face in the rot and the wet, and felt my body continue to betray me. My bladder released, my bowels loosened. All the small dignities that separate us from meat vanished as my autonomic system started to fail. I was still breathing, still thinking, still aware, but I was becoming less human with every second. The pressure increased. I felt it settling over me like a weighted blanket made of concrete, pressing down on every square inch of my body simultaneously. My chest began to compress, slowly, so slowly, I could track each millimeter of collapse. My ribs creaked, cartilage grinding against bone. My lungs tried to expand and couldn't. Tried again and managed only a weak flutter. Each breath got shorter, thinner, a pitiful wheeze that barely moved air. I tried to crawl. Some desperate animal instinct overrode the paralysis, fired the muscles in my arms, made my fingers claw at the dirt. I moved perhaps an inch before my left shoulder dislocated with a wet popping sound. Then my right. Both arms now useless, hanging at wrong angles, nothing working anymore. My vision was going, not dark, not yet, but compressed somehow, like I was looking through a tube that got narrower with each heartbeat. In that shrinking field of view, I could see my hand, palm up in the dirt, fingers twitching with residual nerve signals. The nails were turning blue, the skin was going gray. My heartbeat stuttered. I felt it physically, felt the rhythm break, felt the muscle convulse inside its shrinking cage. It was trying so hard, that stupid faithful muscle, trying to keep doing the job it had done every second since before I was born. But the space was wrong now, the geometry impossible. The chambers were folding in on themselves, valves crushing closed, the whole mechanism breaking down as the pressure continued to increase. One of my ribs cracked, then another, not breaking outward like in movies, snapping inward, splinters of bone pressing into soft tissue. I felt one pierce my liver, felt the organ tear, felt warm blood pulling in my abdominal cavity with nowhere to go. Another rib punctured my lung, and the wet bubbling sound I'd been making got quieter, more liquid, as blood filled the space where air should be. I was drowning from the inside, suffocating and drowning simultaneously while my heart did its pathetic fluttering dance, beating against bone fragments and compressed tissue and the walls of a chest that was now barely wider than a paperback book. The pain should have made me pass out. That's what happens in normal does. Normal trauma. The brain has mercy circuits, fail-safes that shut down consciousness when input becomes too extreme. But this wasn't normal death. This thing didn't allow escape through unconsciousness. It kept me aware, kept me experiencing every sensation, every moment of disintegration, because that was the point. The point was to feel it all. Another memory flooded in. A man, this time younger, a college kid who'd come out here to scatter his dead dog's ashes. I lived through his unmaking too, felt his jaw dislocate and unhinge, felt his mouth open wider and wider until the skin at the corners split, until he could feel the hinges of his jaw pressed against his neck, felt his tongue swell and block his airway, felt him choking on his own flesh while his skull slowly collapsed like a stumped soda can. Then another memory, and another. A dozen deaths, 100, flowing through me in rapid succession. Men and women, and one teenager, all in these woods, all found by this thing, all unmade according to its specific methodology. I observed their final moments, like data files being copied to a hard drive. Thought the variations in the technique, the refinements in the process. It was learning. That's what I understood in those final seconds. This thing wasn't hunting, wasn't feeding, wasn't doing any of the things that normal predators do. It was practicing. Each death taught it something new about human anatomy, human physiology, the limits and breaking points of the human body. We were experiments, test subjects in some kind of cosmic vivisection, and it was taking detailed notes. My vision went dark around the edges. The tube narrowed to a pinpoint. I could see only a small circle of dirt now, just a few inches in front of my face, and even that was going gray and indistinct. My hearing was fading too, the world going muffled and distant, like I was underwater. My heart beat one more time. I felt it, felt the muscle contract with every ounce of strength that it left. Felt it try to pump blood through a circulatory system that was now a maze of collapsed vessels and torn chambers. The beat was weak, irregular, more of a quiver than a pump. Then it stopped, not all at once, didn't just quit. It tore itself apart. The muscle fibers ripped, the chambers ruptured. The whole thing came apart like tissue paper soaked in water. I felt it happen. Felt each structure fail in sequence, felt my heart literally disintegrate inside a space that no longer had room for it to exist. The last thing I experienced wasn't pain. The pain had transcended into something else by then, something my brain could no longer categorize or process. The last thing was understanding. Cold, clear, terrible understanding. This thing did not places. It didn't attach itself to specific locations or specific victims. It hunted in patterns, followed timelines, worked according to rules I couldn't comprehend, and it didn't kill because it needed to or wanted to. It killed because that's what it was designed to do, programmed for, optimized for. It was a biological algorithm running on meat and terror, and I had been nothing but a data point. I was already dead by the time that last thought finished forming. My brain just hadn't stopped yet, still processing information for a few more seconds on momentum and habit, and the electrical ghosts of synapses that no longer connected to anything. I felt the moment consciousness ended, felt the lights go out in my mind room by room, section by section, until there was nothing left but darkness and the distant sound of something breathing. The forest exhaled, not wind through trees, not the breath of any living thing. It was the sound of a space emptying out, of presence withdrawing, of something vast and terrible moving on to wherever it went between encounters. The pressure lifted, the smell faded, the wrongness in the air dissipated like smoke. Silence returned to the woods. In the morning, our ranger would find my body half a mile off the main trail, partially covered in leaves. The official report would note extensive trauma inconsistent with any known animal attack. My ribs would be found intact but compressed, my spine severed cleanly with no corresponding damage to surrounding tissue. My heart ruptured from the inside out. Cause of death would be listed as unknown, probably an aneurysm or some kind of rapid onset medical condition. The kind of thing that happens sometimes, 1 in a million chance, just terrible bad luck. They'd call my parents, my mom would cry, my dad would demand a full investigation. There would be questions about the trail conditions, whether proper warnings had been posted, whether the State Forest Service had done due diligence in maintaining safe recreation areas. Lawyers would get involved, settlements would be discussed, but nobody would come looking for answers in these woods. Nobody would spend a night out here trying to understand what really happened. The forest would keep its secrets. The thing would wait for the next hiker to wander off the path, the next curious soul to ignore the warnings and push deeper into trees that were older than civilization and remembered things that humans were never meant to understand. And somewhere in the rot and the dark, in the places where the light never quite reaches, my final moments would be stored with all the others. Another perfect death, another successful test, another point of data in an experiment that had been running for centuries and would continue running for centuries more, refining its technique one body at a time. The woods don't care who you were, they only care what you become. And I became a lesson that no one will ever learn.